men can start to look at the Earth with the eyes of a god. But for these special few, the deepening vision is but a beginning. Intense years of work in science, engineering, and on the human body have been preparing for the next step, which will free man completely from an earthbound existence and start his exploration of the cosmos. Soon he will leap out of Earth orbit to follow the path already pioneered by unmanned craft across 250,000 miles of space and land on the surface of the moon. This is not the moon, though today it is a stepping stone to the moon. This is Ascension Island, a volcanic tip of land in the middle of the South Atlantic, 1,000 miles from anywhere else. Discovered in 1501, no one wanted to live here for over 300 years. Early sailors describing its aspect as bleak, awesome, and terrible. Created by an underwater eruption, it is peppered with the craters of 40 volcanoes round a solidified cauldron, the Devil's Riding School. Left for centuries to the wideawakes, suddenly today it has become the focus of tremendous activity. Part of the vast project to put man on the moon.
Required to be operational within 10 months on Ascension Island, an Earth station for satellite communication for the Apollo moonshot program. Have a fully steerable 42-foot antenna, accurate to within 30,000th of an inch, a system temperature of less than 100 degrees K,
This is all rather amazing, even to me as cable and wireless project engineer. We were an advance party on the island only 6 months ago, making our final surveys on the site, checking the electrical characteristics of the area. We knew it should be all right because we'd gone over the island map with a tooth comb to find a naturally screened area, and we'd chosen the middle of a plain surrounded by mountains. And it was okay. But then I could only go on and think of all else that had to be done before the station could be built here, on practically a desert island, 4,000 miles from England, off most shipping routes, and with no regular air service. For the moment of signing the contract, I knew it to be simply the beginning. In just 10 months, the station had to be designed, built, tested, and working. We had to make that contract first into scientific language, with details that could be turned into shapes and circuits.
The antenna feed shall illuminate the reflector for transmission in the 6 GCs band and for reception at 4 GCs, such that a transmission...
Then coordinate the work of all the engineers, suppliers, and builders in getting everything from bricks to baked beans to arrive at this spot in the South Atlantic at the same moment. Yet here they are, with 6 weeks to go and 2 days ahead of schedule. And not hanging around on the jetty long either, quickly up to the site. But our problem now is to put the station together. on time.
Apollo in Ascension must be on time. Many things as possible going on together. No one side of the work can stand still. Control gear, transmitter racks, receiver racks, power racks, digital servo controls, test equipment. This is the electronic heart of the station. 50 cables to be sorted out to go between the control room and the aerial itself. 50 cables, each containing up to 80 wires. A total of 4,000 connections, and each one must be right. The mechanical heart of the aerial system. 10 tons of precision machined steel for the main bearing. 10 tons which have to be maneuvered into place to an accuracy of 5/1000ths of an inch.
No, it's not very level, is it?
And there is no spare for this. It is one off, and that's it.
Lower away steady, Monroe. Just a little inch, Monroe.
Nothing must go wrong, for the Apollo program itself is marching ahead. At Cape Kennedy, the giant Saturn V rocket, weighing 6 million pounds and with engines developing over 7 million pounds of thrust, is in its final test stages. The machine which will blast 3 men out of Earth's gravity and for the first time send them off into outer space. 360 feet high, the rocket system is immensely bigger than anything before, and all the communications that go with it have to be incredibly more precise and more powerful. And moon landing is now planned for 1969. Then, astronauts who have been training for years for this moment, preparing to move and climb, walk and work in a spacesuit with gravity only 1/7 of that on Earth, will find themselves on the moon's surface, mission accomplished, and getting back into their landing module for the first stage of their return to Earth. This is the beginning of the most hazardous part of their journey. They will have to blast themselves off the moon surface in their landing vehicle and join up again with their mother craft left orbiting the moon. Then, out of moon orbit, back on the 250,000 miles to Earth. But to land safely on the Earth, it will first have to get into Earth orbit. And in order to get into orbit, while traveling at 25,000 miles an hour, it will have to hit a corridor only 40 miles wide. So communications from the capsule to Earth are absolutely vital. Streams of data will be received by tracking stations like the one on Ascension Island, sent to the Earth station, and up to a stationary satellite 22,000 miles above the Earth. From the satellite, the signal is relayed down to the American continent at Andover, Maine, and so to the spaceflight centers at Goddard and Houston. Computers there will work out instructions to go back to the spaceship. And the Earth station will be a vital part of a two-way process to get men to and from the moon. Ascension, day 2 of the main construction.
that, Billy. Are we nearly over the keyway now? What does it want, a little turn to the left? Can you take it out a bit, Harry? Lower the way, can you? That's it, hold it, Peter.
Wait a minute, Peter, going Peter out.
The aerial grows within the island landscape. A lonely outpost being built to serve a handful of even lonelier men and matched by years of island history. This is Comfortless Cove. In the 19th century, ships used it to land their victims of yellow fever. The few Navy inhabitants of the island brought them food to the top of the cliffs, fired a musket as a signal, and quickly withdrew. The sick buried their own dead, and when the inhabitants found that the food was no longer taken, they waited 6 months, then went in and buried the last body. Today it is the only spot in the island thought safe enough from sharks to bathe. For the inhabitants of the small township, it is a strange life. Though everyone now has to do with communications, no one can say he belongs here. Everyone has a home elsewhere, either in St. Helena or in Britain. They make their home here for a few years in the volcanic dust and then move on. Children grow up together, often learning of things they have never seen.
Do you think a train can go faster than a bus? Some trains can go very fast. When do you think people would go by bus?
But there are well-known landmarks, and everyone tries to make it as much like home as possible. Ascension is a crossroads for peoples, a crossroads of world communications, and now becoming a center for communication to the depth of space. Day 4, and still ahead of schedule.
Oh, hold it there a minute, Monroe. Right. All right, Johnny? Billy. Billy, pull your rope round a wee bit. Okay? Right, come round a wee bit, right? Good boy. Okay now, Billy. Steady. Just a little bit, Harry. Are you landing now, Harry? Yes. Joggle it then. Right, forward, please, Monroe. Hold it, hold it.
Transmitters. There will be 2 on the whole assembly, 1 working and 1 standing by, day and night. Now, first tests. The start of a series to make sure nothing went wrong in transit, gradually working up to full power checks. The control room grows in the hands of a dozen engineers. Control here will be linked via the satellite to the center of the network at Houston. Immediate contact will always be possible. Day 5. Ascension is right in the path of the southeast trade winds, blowing from morning till night. The shape is made and made secure. At Cape Kennedy, 50 astronauts are in training for going to the moon or beyond. the pioneers who must hit the 40-mile-wide corridor on their return to Earth. For if they do not, their capsule will shoot into orbit round the sun and be lost in space forever. On this day, the launch of another Saturn 1B rocket. It will be the second stage of the one which goes to the moon, yet it is still twice as big as anything fired before. On the eastern tip of Ascension Island is the NASA station which tracks and monitors this and every space shot, from scientific probes to manned flights. For the succession of tests in the Apollo program, pre-taped data is fed into their system at the precise moment.
Horizon -5 seconds. Roger, servos. Receiver 2, horizon -5 seconds. Stand by for acquisition. Acquisition track. All right, we're getting him now. We're getting a strong signal. Stand by for loop lock. All right, I see him coming in now. Stand by. Loop.
The contact made, and streams of vital information will go back across the island for transmission by the completing Earth station. Day 6.
Don't let the wind catch you.
Yeah, I just want to come across the touch, Johnny.
Okay.
How's it look from underneath, Johnny? All right, looks fine here.
Okay, hold it, Monroe. You okay there, Harry? Yes, okay. Okay, Harry. Yes, okay. Now. Can you take it from there? Okay.
We've certainly been in some odd places together, but the job here's going fine. At least the weather's good, not like it was in England when we put the station up there for the first time. Only 3 months ago it was. Day and night then, we worked in all kinds of weather, ironing out the snags, making sure it all fitted. And having got it together, checked and working, we had to take it to pieces, pack it up, send it here, and put it together again.
Heights. On this job, you must have a good head for heights. You've got to look after the other fellow. It was much harder in England than it was here. It was a bit of a job getting everything to fit, doing so many modifications to the job. And not only that, the winds and weather were really terrible. Sometimes we felt like spacemen ourselves. All the clothes we had to wear.
Weather, design, time, all linked together. You can't put up petals if the wind is 60 miles an hour, and if the petals aren't up, you can't make the electrical checks. So you do not know what modifications may be needed. Engineers sat down together week after week checking progress, deciding on changes, working 18 hours a day, and somehow, in spite of the weather, keeping it on schedule. Now, 6 months later, day 7 on Ascension, even here, gentle rain greets the completion of the dish.
Keep it coming.
Day 8,
Right.
a lot still to be done. And until the motors and all their controls are installed, the only way to turn the dish is by hand.
Right, you're coming up now then. Okay then. Yes, okay, Dick. Okay, Monroe.
Once the transmitters get into position, the whole structure begins to take on its final shape.
Oh, she's fine, she's fine. All right, Monroe.
When it's finished, a great feeling. We like to go out and have a beer up.
This afternoon, you know, we just started turning the turnaround mixer around and somebody started up the aerial. Come on then.
There's one fair county in Ireland where memories so glorious and grand, where nature has vanished the bounty on the orchards of Erin's green land. It's my own Irish home. Far across the foam, although I've often left it in foreign lands to roam, where I wander.
Now the sun is coming and we all wake up. Wave our arms around. Come on, nicely. Come on, Jackie, please. Up. Up. That's right. And back again. Back.
Well, we're now getting down to the basic electrics of the system. All the control mechanisms which get the aerial pointing in the right direction and stay pointing to within a minute fraction of a degree. But we have reached the stage where we can begin to call it a station and not a project.
Checks and more checks. Power supplies, like the transmitters, in duplicate. Should anything go wrong with the first, the second coming in automatically. The arteries of the system, the cables, carrying the complex of information to and from the aerial, to control what it does and to let the engineers know how every bit is working. The veins of the system, hundreds of intricate wires and printed circuits, thousands of transistors, and the latest micro devices where you get a dozen transistors in the space of one. The station grows within, and outside looks nearly ready for moon communications. And all around, the island's bleak trachyte and lava seem to sense its purpose. Yet, 3,000 feet up, man is very much on Earth. Green Mountain, a lava summit which over the centuries has weathered down to soil and has been carefully planted over the last 100 years. So that now in this tiny area, there are trees from every continent in the world, together with its own descendant of the first in the world, the tree fern. The unique atmosphere is at one and the same time subtropical, tropical, and temperate. Sometimes, indeed, you could think yourself in England.
I've been here now about 9 years. Though there are a lot of problems in growing things up here, I still find the whole project fascinating. We can easily get salads, milk, some fresh meat and potatoes. All kinds of things grow wild up here, like ginger and guavas. But we have to be quite ruthless with them, otherwise they just take over. But it's marvelous to hear a bird's song and feel grass under your feet. The Navy started the farm in about 1840, when they were the only people on the island. They laid out the water catchments, which have been the island's main source for about 80 years. They also brought in the first donkeys and then abandoned them. We use a few for work. But a great number still just roam the island, grubbing up whatever dried vegetation they can find down in the bleakness of the rest of the island.
Okay, let's try joystick control now. Okay, Jim, are they clear on the aerial?
Yes, all clear on the aerial.
Right. Now ease it forward. Okay, yeah. Yeah, it's coming down. Slowly.
70.
Down 70.
Yeah, okay. Now in azimuth. Yeah, okay, it's moving in azimuth, all right. Okay, it's going. It's all right, fine.
The first stage of test, so far so good, and the engineers can feel that the final working is within sight. The final stage when the station is sending and receiving the complex of information for the spacecraft via the latest and biggest satellite, now undergoing its checks in a laboratory 5,000 miles away. The mosaic on its outside is 12,000 solar cells to give it power from the sun during its life in space. At least 3 years at a height of 22,000 miles. Target position for the Ascension station. Day 21. Next test, tracking.
Okay, boresight coming up. Okay, on boresight.
A simulated satellite just a few miles away. Locking onto this is a major check of the aerial's tracking powers, needed to search out and hold the satellite when it is launched. At Cape Kennedy, the satellite is now in the nose of its launch rocket. Fueling and final checks are underway, and it is just a few hours now to blast off. A few hours before the satellite will be lifted to 23,000 miles, kicked into elliptical orbit, and then at the right moment brought into circular synchronous orbit only a few degrees north of Ascension Island. There the station is ready. Ready on time. And waiting.
Minus 20. 15. 10. 9. 8. 7. 6. 5. 4. 3. 2. 1. 0. Ignition. We have a liftoff. Keep rising.
1940 GMT. Angles, azimuth 020076, elevation 033218, box search to be set in motion.
And the moon is only the beginning.